And we can sometimes have a lot of resistance to being with the grief because grief changes us, loss changes us. And, there's a lot of what ifs I think that we get caught in. Like, what if I feel this way forever? What if I can't handle this? What if it just gets bigger and bigger? What if I never feel better? But it encompasses everything. And it makes it almost hard to imagine that there's going to be a time where maybe we are still grieving, but are maybe holding it a little less tightly. Hello, and welcome to Relax and Let Go on Sounds True 1. My name is Jennifer Patterson. We're going to be doing some breath work tonight. Sounds True 1 is a beautiful space for you to learn new things about yourself and to help support your growth. We're going to be working with grief tonight. So, it might be hard. It might feel a little heavy at times, but I also am hoping that the breath will help hold it with you, with us. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about, what we're going to be doing together tonight, what breathwork even is, especially if it's your first time joining. But we're going to focus on our relationship to grief, and we're going to focus on how it maybe shows up in our body. And we're going to use our breath to help us move the emotion, move where it shows up, and move how it feels in our body through a little bit. And that means feeling it as well. I doubt you need this reminder, but we are in a time of overwhelming loss and grief, both collectively and individually. There's just so much happening in our lives and in our dear ones' lives and our community's lives. I would guess if you're here tonight or, you might have experience with navigating grief and loss in the last couple of years. Maybe you lost a loved one, a friend, a dream, a job, a house. Maybe you're navigating chronic illness and changes in your body. The reason I love being in spaces where we breathe with grief is that I'm a long time student of grief. I am no expert. And, I think if we're doing it right, we always are kind of brand new in our grieving. It hits us deeply every time. I've navigated a bunch of just really difficult losses, especially in the last year. And it's meant that I've had to kind of double down on my own practices of support and care and find ways to navigate it. And I think that we don't always do a great job in this culture of being with our grief, and I don't think that the culture and the climate of the world right now, the pushing forward, moving back into work and all the things, there's not always a lot of room for grief. And there needs to be, because it's going to be something we're going to keep kind of encountering over and over throughout our lives. And we can sometimes have a lot of resistance to being with the grief because grief changes us, loss changes us. We often come through periods of deep or longer term or more difficult times of grief, new people, or at least changed people. And there's a lot of what ifs I think that we get caught in. Like, what if I feel this way forever? What if I can't handle this? What if it just gets bigger and bigger? What if I never feel better? And those are real. The pain that I think we experience in grief can feel so acute and overwhelming that it encompasses everything. And it makes it almost hard to imagine that there's going to be a time where maybe we are still grieving, but are maybe holding it a little less tightly. And the thing about grief is that it's much like all of our emotions, they're embodied, they're in our bodies, and they need to be experienced, they need to be felt. The circumstances that bring us into these longer, deeper dives of grief, often we can't change them. There's no changing them. And so we're kind of tasked with the job of learning how to live with and through our grief, We learn how to like continue, navigating the world while we're grieving. And so I love having spaces like this because tonight, today, wherever you're going to be doing this, like you get a chance to just focus and tend to your breath, to your body. I also think that grieving is kind of like a dying alongside what or who we lose. We lose access maybe to parts of ourselves. We lose a relationship to like who we were before the experience or the loss of the person. And we, again, aren't the same after. And, it can be hard to navigate, because a lot of times these things happen without our desire or consent. And then we're like, okay, now I have to keep going, I guess. And part of keeping going is being honest about being impacted, being honest about being hurt or angry or just like deeply sad. But I also know from my own experiences that deep grief is the result of deep love. So when we grieve really fully and we stay present with it, we're in a practice of love. We are in a practice of remembrance. We are honoring the people, the places, the situations that have changed. And so in that sense, grief is a doorway. It's a portal and it's a gift. Maybe when we're out of the acute moment of it, we might notice that it's a gift because we get to honor our love and we get to honor our lives. And breathwork's a really beautiful place to practice being with grief. To give you a quick sense in case you haven't done breathwork before, it's a huge umbrella term. I like to say that it's a practice of intention and attention to our breath. So in that sense, it's really simple because, we're breathing day to day all the time. But when we come into these practices of like really being with our breath and, adapting it or changing it or making different ways of being in the practice with ourselves more available, we have a lot that comes online. And, breathwork isn't new. It is ancient. It is existing in so many traditions and cultures across the globe. But tonight we're going to be working with a 3-part open mouth breath that is kind of energizing and like, I like to liken it to honestly like exercise almost because we're keeping it moving. It might feel a little fast at times, but we're awakening things. And it also has roots in pranayamic practice and some similarity, I would say, to holotropic practice as well, but it's its own breath. And there are so many breath practices and styles. So I always recommend like trying as many as you can because we need different ones at different times. And I want you to know too, that if you struggle to access your breath, you're welcome here. If you struggle to like be in your body, you're welcome here. I don't think those things are easy. I don't think being in our bodies is easy at all. And I think the beauty of breath work is that we get to rebuild our relationship with our bodies a little bit. We get to come back into, sometimes moving through hard stuff, but coming back into a presence with ourselves. And it's so key, especially to be working with like bigger emotions like grief, or maybe there'll be some anger tonight that's often connected to grief. So my main recommendation for you in the practice tonight is just to stay present to your physical body. So, that means like you are the like boss of the practice. You get to decide how fast or how slow you go. You might feel distracted at times. That's okay. It's part of a practice. When we're distracted and we find ourselves pulled out, it's a chance to just kind of come back in and be like, I was going over there, or, I started thinking. No shame needed. It's just part of the practice. So yeah, we're going to keep the breath moving and we're going to open it with like a slower breath. And then we're going to move into a 3-part open mouth breath. And then we're going to go ground back down into a slower breath. And I always like to share just like some things you might notice in your body while you're practicing, because I think it's helpful to know that these things are really kind of common and normal, especially in the 3-part breath. You might notice like tingling throughout your body, or maybe your hands or your feet or your mouth might get like a little tense or cramped. You might feel really floaty or, kind of in outer space, but you're very much in the room. And big emotions can come through. And again, it's like when we access a deeper, fuller breath, we're accessing so much more of our bodies, and our bodies hold things. And so we're moving it through. But I also want to say, if it ever feels like too much, slow it down, open your eyes, and maybe just kind of like pat your body and ground back down, look around the room. Breathe through your nose if you need to, if that feels better, because those will all kind of just slow the speed of the practice down a little bit. So please feel free to like adapt it how you need to for tonight. And yeah, we don't want to push ourselves too hard, because we're trying to learn or relearn, like being really kind and compassionate with ourselves. So take full freedom to adapt. But before we get into like comfortable spots for the practice, I want to teach you the 3-part breath really quick. If you haven't done it before, it might feel a little weird, because it's kind of like, we're not doing it regularly. So I like to start with a hand on my chest, and feel free to join in with me just for this practice run. And then I put a hand down right below my my rib cage, around my diaphragm and abdomen. And the 3-part breath, it's through an open mouth. So the inhales and the exhales are through the open mouth. And then we'll do that for a good chunk and drop back into a slower breath. But for now, on that first inhale, you want to drop the breath down as far as you can into your abdomen, down towards your diaphragm. And then the second inhale comes into your chest and out. So it's belly, chest, out. And it just goes. You probably can't see from the angle that I'm at, but on that first and second inhale, my abdomen and rib cage are expanding, and then they drop back for that second inhale, and they expand up in the chest and then out. So it just goes. Hopefully that's clear. Feel free to get cozy. I like to do this practice lying down, just because you can get a little bit dizzy, and it's nice to not have to hold your body up. But if for comfort reasons or body things, you want to sit in a chair, just make sure you're like supported in a chair, and maybe you have a pillow nearby just to help hold you in the space. But I'll give everyone a second to just get settled, and we're going to get right into it. Okay, so hopefully you're in a comfortable spot. If it feels good to close your eyes, I really invite you to. It kind of just helps bring us inside a little bit instead of having the external happening still. If you want to just find a spot in the room or on the floor or the wall to hold your stare instead, that's totally okay too, but just kind of like a soft gaze where you can really just try to drop down a little bit. And before we get into the 3-part, I'm going to start us off with a slower inhale and exhale. So this one is however feels comfortable, nose or mouth. So we're just going to go in, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then out, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then in, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then out, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then in, and then out. On those exhales, letting your body settle into the floor or the couch or the yoga mat or the chair, and then in, and out. Feeling being held, feeling those pieces of supports on your body, in and then out. I'm going to invite you to start that 3-part breath. So belly, chest, out. That feels too fast for you, again, slow it down. It's your game tonight. It's your practice. Feeling that expansion on those inhales, and that's going to build. It might not be there right this second, and that's okay. Might feel a little shallow or tight. It's no big deal. It's a practice. Keeping that pattern going, especially as you settle in and get adjusted. Noticing too, a lot of distraction can come in the beginning, a lot of what am I doing, or the brain just trying to run the show. And so invite your brain to just hang out on like a bleacher in the sidelines. Just stay with your abdomen, stay with your chest, and then out. As you're starting to settle in, you might be noticing some stuff in your body, maybe some tingling or some cramping, or maybe some temperature changes. You just got really cold or hot. Just kind of follow what happens in your body and just notice. It's a practice of noticing the tiny shifts, bringing our attention to that place and breathing with it. Big, generous exhales to really just letting it all go on that exhale, and then just right back in on the inhale. Allowing yourself to breathe with and through whatever shows up. Grief maybe is already here. Maybe there's some tears. Just slowing down and coming back in towards yourself. They might show up. Let them be here. Let them out. You can cry, scream, stomp throughout the whole practice if you want to, but moving that energy. And noticing when your breath stops, because sometimes it's a way that we just try to shut it down. So back into the breath. Inviting in more ease on those inhales. I know it can be a lot to get used to in the first couple minutes, but letting that kind of like come in an easeful way, an expansive way. You can even put your hands right below your rib cage to feel that abdomen increase on the inhale. Just keeping it going, whatever pace feels right for right now. Without thinking too hard, this is just kind of like a question to breathe with. Try asking yourself, like, where does grief live in my body? Where can you feel it? What parts are tired or holding a lot or tense? And finding a place where you feel like there's some residue present, and just breathing with that place, imagining even in your mind's eye like a balloon just expanding on those inhales and just growing that place. Breathing with that place, maybe even checking in and asking that place, like, what do you need to feel witnessed? What does the grief need to feel witnessed in your body? Who are you when you're grieving? And again, these are not like, we're going to need answers here. They're just like breathing with the questions, seeing what they awaken in you. But yeah, who are you now? Who is the you that's here now? Maybe after numerous periods of grief or loss, who's here? Who gets to breathe and be witnessed? Shaking out a little bit, helping that energy move, especially if you've got some tension, or if it's, in your legs, shaking your legs or stomping. Again, I highly recommend a scream. Highly recommend. If you can do it in your space, please do it. But tending to those places, bringing a lot of compassion to the grief, compassion to your body, to your breath. Big exhales. Again, working with the energy that might be rising up in your body, moving it, expressing it, and then jumping right back into that breath. Stepping through that doorway a little bit, that portal. What's on the other side? Finding your breath on the other side. Then I invite you to let go of that 3-part breath, that energizing breath, and come back into the way you started. A slower breath, Maybe in through the nose and out through the mouth if that's comfortable, or in and out through the mouth if that's better. So just breathing in nice and slow and really expanding the breath throughout your whole belly up to your shoulders. So in. And then out. In. Out. Settle into your own rhythm with it, nice and slow. Letting that breath ground and stabilize you. If you want to try saying something out loud, I am here, even in my grief. I am here, even in my grief. Just breathing with that. Staying in the room, staying in the body with your breath. Even some gratitude towards yourself if that feels possible, for being in the hard stuff, breathing with it. And then slowly easing back into the room, maybe rolling your wrists and your ankles, your neck, opening your eyes back up if they were closed. Just coming back in. Just noticing how your body feels, noticing any places of tension or holding that you were working with. Gratitude, lots of gratitude. Pile it on till you're nauseous of it. It's hard work being with the big feelings. So that was the 3-part breath. I hope it felt supportive, and my invitation to you in the next week, however long you want to work with it, is that you keep working with this kind of practice. So maybe the next time you're feeling, a wave of emotion come up, or, the tears are just in the corner of your eye but not coming out. If you have a few minutes, even 5 minutes, feel free to try this out. I like to ground it in the beginning and the end, just because it can be enlivening and a lot can show up, and we want to just kind of support the parasympathetic nervous system, bring us back down into a resting place. But yeah, we did that for about 20 minutes. So you can do it for that long, or you can really do it for much shorter. And feel free to play with it. I think the 3-part breath can be a lot sometimes, even if you work with it longer, which sometimes I do in practices with people. Often we do 45 minutes. So If you want to do a little bit longer, if you feel like there's a lot to move through, do it, try it out. But yeah, ground it in the softness of the beginning and the end. And if it felt super intense or undesirable today, I just invite you to, like, if there's like a little tiny part of you that's like, maybe I'm interested in trying it again, try it again. I think we're different all the time. We're coming in with different things all the time. And sometimes we need to just do it again to feel like, oh, okay, I feel a little more settled in the practice. Thanks again so much for joining us here at Sounds True One. And I hope you keep coming back and keep finding the spaces and the practices that resonate